In Asia, locals have known for centuries that living near a hospital means living near something else too, something that never checked out. These three stories come from real people who found apartments with amazing rent, ignored every warning, and paid a price that had nothing to do with money. So here's the question you need to ask yourself before you ever sign a lease near a hospital in Asia. What if the thing staring at you from that window at 3 in the morning is not a patient at all? Kenji moved to Osaka in the spring, the kind of spring where everything smells like rain and fresh starts. He had just taken a new office job, the kind that pays enough to live on but not enough to be picky. So when he found a small apartment that was clean, quiet, and 30% cheaper than anything else he had looked at, he signed the papers the same day. He never asked the landlord why it was so cheap. That was his first mistake, and he would not understand it until it was too late. The building sat on a narrow street in a busy part of the city. From his third-floor window, he could see the corner convenience store, the row of vending machines glowing orange and blue in the dark, and directly across the road, a large public hospital. It was one of the older ones, wide concrete walls gray from years of rain. At night, the emergency entrance glowed white and cold under fluorescent lights that never turned off. They buzzed all night long, low and steady, like something that was breathing. His first week was completely fine. He unpacked boxes, learned which train to take, and ate instant noodles on the floor because he had not bought a table yet. He slept hard every night. He felt good. He thought he had found the best deal in the city, and then the second week began. He woke up at exactly 3:14 in the morning. He knew the time because he grabbed his phone off the floor right away. The room was dark. The street outside was quiet, and from somewhere just beyond his window, someone was crying. It was soft crying. The careful kind, the kind that sounds like a person trying very hard not to make any noise at all. Kenji lay on his back and stared at the ceiling and listened. He told himself it was a neighbor through thin walls. He told himself old buildings carry sound in strange ways. He believed both things easily because he wanted to, and he rolled over and went back to sleep. The next night it happened again. Same time, 3:14. He sat up and walked to the window and looked down at the empty street. Then he looked up. In a window on the 4th floor of the hospital, directly across from where he was standing, a figure stood completely still. Pale clothes. A hospital gown, maybe. It was facing his window without moving. He told himself it was just a patient who could not sleep. He did not remember yet what the nurse had told him 3 days earlier when he went in for a stomach ache. She had said very casually that the 4th floor had been closed for over a year. He would remember that very soon. The second story comes from Seoul, South Korea, and it was shared on a large Korean community board, the kind where people post at midnight because they have nowhere else to put what they saw. The person who posted it used a made-up name. She called herself Minji. She said she was a graduate student and she was looking for the cheapest place she could find near her university. What she found was a gosiwon, which is a tiny room about the size of a walk-in closet, just big enough for a desk, a bed, and a person who does not ask too many questions. The building was old and the hallway smelled like cooked rice and something underneath it that she could not name. But the price was low and the subway was close, and she was 23 years old and tired, and she signed the contract and moved in on a Tuesday. The Gosiwon was a 5-minute walk from a hospital that had been in that neighborhood for decades. At night, you could hear ambulances from her window. She did not mind it at first. She told her friends she was getting used to city noise. She bought a small fan to run all night so she would not have to hear the sirens. She studied until 1 or 2 in the morning and fell into bed and did not dream. The first strange thing happened after she had been there for about 2 weeks. She came home late from the library, maybe 11 at night, and when she stepped into the hallway of the Gosiwon, she saw an old woman standing at the far end of the corridor. The woman was facing the wall. She wore a light blue cardigan and her hair was white, and she was completely still. Minji assumed it was another resident. She said good evening in Korean and walked past her to her room. The woman did not answer, did not move. Minji thought that was odd. She thought about it while she brushed her teeth. She told herself old people sometimes stood quietly and that was their right. She went to bed. She asked the building manager the next morning if an older woman lived on her floor. The manager looked at her for a moment too long before saying no. The floor had only young students. Had been that way for 2 years. Minji described the blue cardigan, the white hair, the spot at the end of the hall. The manager stopped smiling. He said that end of the hallway was where the previous building had a room that was removed during renovation. A room where some years before, a very old woman had been found after no one had checked on her for many days. He said this quietly. He said Minji should burn incense if she believed in that kind of thing. Then he walked away and did not look back, and Minji stood in the lobby holding her coffee and feeling the air around her go very, very cold. The third story is the one that is hardest to explain. And it comes from Taipei, Taiwan, where a young man named Daniel, a name he chose himself when he posted the story on a popular local forum, moved into an apartment in a district close to a large medical center. He had done some research. He knew in Taiwan there is a concept called ashongjai, which means a house where someone has died in a bad way. And he knew landlords are sometimes required to tell you about this, but not always. And he knew cheap apartments near hospitals were sometimes cheap for reasons that had nothing to do with square footage. He knew all of this. He moved in anyway because the apartment had a balcony and good light, and the rent was almost too good to believe. He lived there for 3 weeks before anything happened. It started with his shoes. Every morning he would find them moved. Not far. Just turned around so the toes were pointing toward the door instead of away from it. He lived alone. He checked his door and his windows. Everything was locked. He told himself he must be moving them in his sleep somehow, half awake in the night, shuffling around without remembering. He is a logical person, he said in his post. He does not believe easily. Then one night he woke up and the balcony door was open. He always locked it before bed. The curtain was moving in the night air, white fabric lifting and falling like something breathing. He got up and walked to the door and looked out at the balcony. It was empty. The city spread out below him, lights everywhere, the medical center, a few streets over, glowing tall and white in the dark, its windows lit up floor by floor like a building that never sleeps. He stood there for a while, but the night air was warm. Nothing happened. He locked the door again and went back to bed and told himself the latch was old and had slipped on its own. He believed that for 3 more days. Then he found a handprint on the inside of the balcony glass, small. A child's hand, pressed flat against the glass from the outside, 5 floors up, on a building with no ledge wide enough for anyone to stand on. He took a photo. He posted it. The forum responded within minutes. "Get out tonight," people wrote. "Do not sleep there again." There are stories about that building. There are stories about that whole street. Daniel sat at his desk and read every reply. His hands were not quite steady. Outside his window, the city hummed and glowed, and somewhere in the direction of the hospital, a siren rose and fell and disappeared. He looked at the handprint on the glass, small fingers, perfectly clear. He reached out and put his own hand next to it without touching the glass, just to measure. The handprint was about the size of a 7-year-old's hand. He lived alone. Daniel left 3 days after he found the handprint, and not because anything else happened, but because of what he learned when he started asking questions about the building. A woman who sold vegetables from a cart on the corner had been there for 20 years. When he described the apartment and the floor, she nodded before he even finished talking. She said a family had lived there a long time ago. She said there had been a child. She said the child had gone to the hospital and had not come back, and that after that the mother had stopped leaving the apartment, and that was all she would say. She looked away and adjusted the green onions on her cart, and Daniel understood that he was not going to get more than that. He packed a bag. That evening, he stayed with a friend. He went back for his things over the next 2 days, always in daylight, always before 5 in the afternoon. Each time he went back, the shoes by the door were turned around to face the exit. Every single time, as if something wanted to make sure he knew which way to go. The balcony door was always locked when he arrived, and always open when he left. He stopped trying to explain it. On his last visit, he stood in the empty apartment one more time. Sun came through the windows. Dust floated in the light. The city outside was loud and alive. For a moment, the place looked like just an apartment. Just four walls and a floor and a good view. I almost understood how someone could look at it and see nothing wrong. He almost understood why he had signed the lease. Then he noticed the glass on the balcony door. The handprint was still there. He had cleaned it twice. It was back, clear as the first time. Small fingers pressed flat against the inside of the glass. He picked up his last bag. He did not clean it again. He walked out and did not look back, and he has never gone back to that neighborhood, not even to walk through it, not even in the daytime. 3 people, 3 cities, 3 apartments that came with a price nobody put in the lease. Kenji in Osaka, who saw a figure in a closed ward that should have had no one in it. Minji in Seoul, who said good evening to a woman who was not there anymore. Daniel in Taipei, who found a handprint no living child could have left. And all of them found a great deal on rent. All of them ignored the signs. And all of them will tell you the same thing now if you ask, in the same quiet voice people use when they are saying something they know sounds impossible but know is true. Do not live near a hospital in Asia, not because of the noise, not because of the sirens, because the hospitals are not the only ones who have trouble letting people go.